As I'm creating this card using the connect the dots meditation type of technique, I'm thinking about the fact that I used to have quite a business making note cards. In fact, I still have that business, and it's registered in New Jersey as The Carter, even though my last name is Carter with a T. I still have a business called The Carter with a D. And the business transformed into simply my art business, and I kept the name. I didn't make note cards for quite some time. That's a whole different story. But here I am again making note cards. So I thought it was rather intriguing. This paper I'm using is the Reeves BFK printmaking paper. It's not really meant for watercolor, but I love it for watercolor, not for splashy various watercolor techniques, but for sort of filling in shapes, kind of the coloring book method. And I'll be showing you in this video that I've decided to use both for my project and as a bonus lesson for this class. I will show you how I use various techniques that I present in other classes here, the pulling the puddle techniques, where I fill spaces without any streaks, and I can do that by just using one continuous wash of one color, or I can do gradations of it going from light to dark, and I can charge the space with different hues so it changes color along the way, which is really pretty exciting. And then you can, if you like those techniques and like the results, you can just refer back to those classes. I'm using metallic watercolor paints. Not all of them are metallic, but enough of them that it gets a bit of a shimmer to it, which is really nice. These are paints that I get from Beam. They're handmade paints that I find quite extraordinary and fun to use. And notice that I'm working in different areas so that the distribution of some of my colors and values will work out in the end, I hope. And I turn my paper so that it's easier to have control over the flow of my paint. I keep the puddle very wet. As long as it's still wet, I can work back and forth within the shape. And I want to make sure that I have different proportions of colors. I don't want the same amount of pinks as I do golds, as I do lavenders. That's about all the gold I think I want. I might, yeah, I think I'll make that one gold too. I'm going with my intuition. The ink works as a barrier. I find that the ink has filled the fibers of the paper, of especially this kind of paper. So whereas the paint might want to flow along the fibers, the ink stops it. So that's why it's a little bit easier to stay within the lines when you ink it first. And as a reminder, I am using a permanent ink, black ink, in my fountain pen. Warning, when I say permanent, I do not mean India ink. India ink will destroy your fountain pen. I use either platinum carbon ink or I use Noodler's black. If I want to bleed, I will use other ink in my fountain pen, water-soluble ink. When my brush is too wet, I stroke it against a paper towel, but not to make it completely dry, just to get some of the paint and water out of it. The Reeves BFK paper is also really wonderful for putting a glaze over without disturbing the bottom layer. Now here, I could either draw another line. You see, there are 4 points here, so I could make this into 2 triangles, but I might want to just leave that open. I'll see how the rest of it goes, but because these are open, I might want that to be an open space. And I might leave that open also. So I'm going to leave it for a little while. You'll notice too that I really am choking up on my brush, which I try not to do, but sometimes I can't help it. All right, I am going to have to connect these two. Now, I don't do it with a fountain pen because it's going to bleed. So I do it with a micron pen. And this is definitely wrong. So I'm going to try to wet it and get it out of there. Wrong, just, it doesn't feel right to me. 2 things happen as you near the end. One, you become a bit fatigued. And sometimes it's better to stop because I'm just kind of making a mess of some things. And 2, you start finding that your options are a little bit more limited in what might work and what might not work. So it's still important to work intuitively and just see what you're inspired to do. It's good to just get up and stretch, though I'm usually not that sensible. Oh, even that's better than what it was before. I might just leave that. Interesting. Sometimes I need to add a wash just to change the value of something. I'm leaving these white to lead the eye so that this isn't that different from this. I think I just need to darken this little bit and I'll be done. No, this needs to be darkened a little bit. All right, that's it.